Did you know that every movie that comes into South Africa is watched and vetted by the Film and Publications Board? In order to make sure our children are protected from exposure to inappropriate material, we see to it that all movies and video games are made available to the public with the relevant age restriction. We reveal the content while giving you the freedom to choose.
The role of the Film and Publication Board in the South African society is very important. It is our hope and our intention that people will regulate themselves, inform themselves of what regulations are there, what guidelines are there on the age group of the film that have to watch, in order for them to make responsible decisions on who watches what film. It is an institution that is created in our constitutional democracy to ensure that the children of this nation are protected. The Films and Publications Board's intention of influencing behavior of youth is to have massive outreach programs. We go to schools, we go to where the young people are. We use the platforms like your Mixit, like your Facebooks, but we also have campaigns where we have ambassadors that we have appointed who are role models to young people. The Films and Publication Board will always be relevant because society is dynamic, society grows, and young people are born. They still need to be informed of what the norms and the values of society are, and also what our Constitution says and how to use their rights responsibly.
In order to categorize material fairly and successfully, we ensure we balance the right to freedom of expression with an obligation to protect children from exposure to inappropriate material.
The FPB was founded in 1996 through an Act of Parliament. It was a censorship board which was under the Department of Interior Affairs then, which is now the Department of Home Affairs. The basic aim behind the founding of the FPB was twofold in a sense. Firstly, it had to do with the fact that there needed to be an entity that is responsible for classification of content. Like if you look at our mandate, we classify films, games and publications before they are consumed by members of the public.
At the FPB, we have two main aims. One is to regulate the creation, production, possession and distribution of certain publications and films by giving them an age restriction and providing consumer advice. And two is to make the exploitative use of children in pornographic publications, films or the internet a punishable offense. After successfully campaigning against the 24-hour pornographic channel suggested by MultiChoice, the FPB has become increasingly aware of the need to protect children from exposure to undesirable material, and in doing so, have felt the country's support.
The classification process starts with the development of classification guidelines, which basically are informed by the Act and the regulations, and we appoint examiners who are now with the Amendment Act are called classifiers. The role of the classifiers is to basically watch each and every film that gets to FPB and give it an age rating and consumer advice. The people who do the classification are people who are appointed through a public nomination process. So we don't simply wake up and go and appoint people. We advertise in the newspapers. We call on members of the public to nominate people. They nominate people. Then on the basis of that, we engage in the process of shortlisting and recommendations. We also do what we call audience participation workshops, where we will bring together a group of people, let them watch a movie and give us a feedback regarding the classification of the movie. That feeds into our guidelines review, but also we use it to publicize our work and further reach out to people. The FPB communicates through a number of platforms with the public. We communicate through your standard media platforms like your TV, your radio. We also use a lot Facebook, Twitter, and other new social media platforms because we discover that lots of young people, well, including adults as well, are found in these spaces, and it's quite easier to communicate with them. But beyond that, we communicate through partnerships. We partner with community organizations, with non-governmental organizations, in order to reach out to as many communities as possible.
A recent survey conducted by the FPB showed that 83% of South Africans believe that children are already exposed to too much sex and violence in the media.
We don't think legislation will ever be sufficient, especially taking into account the developments in technology. Mixit, for instance, has made a commitment that they were looking at regulations and looking at how they can strengthen monitoring of what is happening in their chat rooms. And we appreciated that. There's been engagement with them through, of course, the ISPA and the WASPA, and we do hope that that engagement continues. Otherwise, really, we can't do this work without the partnership with industry itself.
Working alongside companies such as Stir Kinoko, New Metro, CNA, and many independent video outlets, we are able to see that all relevant material is categorized correctly. Through our broad screening program and random visits to stores all over the country, it's our aim to maintain a high level of vigilance while keeping the country informed.
I think that it's very important that there's a partnership between the FPB and Stir Kinoko. The reason for that is we play in the public domain, and we have an obligation to society to make sure that certain disciplines, certain morals are upheld, and the FPB allows us to do that in a manner that allows independence. There is no bias from our perspective in terms of lowering an age restriction to enhance box office. We make sure that there's integrity in the process, and that's where the FPB plays a role.
New Metro enforces the FPB regulations by ensuring we do regular staff training with our managers and site staff and explaining to them the importance of why those regulations are in place, why they need to be upheld. And we put in the necessary controls that when people buy tickets at the ticket office, that the cashier selling them the ticket, make sure that the age restriction is appropriate to the people that are buying the tickets, or alternatively at the cinema auditorium itself, when they're entering, the doorman checks to make sure that underage people aren't going into age-restricted movies.
Along with placing relevant age restrictions on films, games and publications, we also work alongside the Family Policy Institute against the abuse of minors through child pornography and exploitation, not only in South Africa, but throughout Africa.
The relationship between Childline and the Films and Publications Board is really an important one. We jointly share responsibility for protecting children from exposure to pornography. We can't deal with these issues on our own. We need partnerships, and the partnership with Films and Publications Board for us is a very significant one. We share a common ideology in terms of the fact that it should be a priority, that people are well informed about how pornography and child pornography harms children and what can be done when people come across exposure of children to pornography or the making of child pornography.
As children are at the heart of the FPB, we aim to remain aware of what is happening amongst the youth of South Africa.
It is very important, it's critical, highly desirable measure that should be put in place. Kids like to imitate. We need to stop them from engaging in experimenting in such material like these violent games they play, the pornographic material that they're exposed to. I believe there needs to be a support group of some sort. In the churches, even the school, in partnership with the parents, they can come up with that. How do we deal with that? The TVs and all that, they babysit our children
to an extent that we ignore the age restriction.
Firstly, I can say we usually watch these movies and we get interested. When we get to school, we discuss those kind of topics, then we come to a conclusion that we want to practice them. And at the same time, I can say we're not sure of what are we getting ourselves into. But sometimes when you get to know what is it more about, you just check on them. They are about sex, you know. They talk about more pornography. They don't educate you nothing. Yeah, I can say they put a negative impact in us. I think parents should be there to help out. Social workers, police, the film publication boards, etc. I think they should help in such a way that they give more information. They come to schools, supply with that information so we can know more about how are they damaging our minds, because you find that a guy or a girl at school, it's bullying. There's some of them who grow up with this thing of being a rapist or abusive to other children.
It is an offense to possess, create, produce, distribute, import, access, advertise or promote child pornographic images. And in order to ensure offenders are tracked down and caught, the FPB has launched the Pro Child Initiative. The website fpbprochild.org.za is a service that provides members of the public with an opportunity to report any child sexual abuse images discovered accidentally on the internet. This internet hotline is highly confidential and available 24 hours, 7 days a week.
So far, the reports that we've received is that we've reached more than 5 million South Africans through the information that either the campaign we've been doing on radio, on TV, partnerships with SABC during the World Cup, and all kinds of those outreach partnerships. But second, we've reached more than 60,000 South Africans directly through the initiatives where we go to schools, we go to communities and speak to people directly, and we believe that we are really on track. We use different platforms to do that, but most importantly, we identify what we call successful brands or brands that have a potential to take the FPB to another level, and we work with those. It could be departments of government, it could be NGOs, it could be private sector entities. We work with everyone across the board.
Child pornography is not a victimless offense, and at the FPB, it's our job to ensure the public remains informed and the investigation and prosecution of offenders becomes more efficient and effective. The Film and Publication Board. We inform, you choose.